Hello and welcome everyone to Wildlife Conservation in South Asia, a conversation on the impacts of exacerbating climate change on the region's ecosystem and what solutions and conservation efforts are urgently needed. I'm Farwa Aamer, the Director of South Asia Initiatives at the Asia Society Policy Institute in New York. This webinar marks the third session in Asia Society's India's Summer Learning Series, following insightful conversations already on climate advocacy and climate finance needs in South Asia. South Asia has, in the recent years, experienced extreme weather events from droughts to erratic monsoons and from receding glaciers to catastrophic flooding episodes. These events are now the region's reality and just doesn't impact lives and livelihoods of the rapidly growing population of the region, but it also profoundly impacts the region's wildlife and habitats and have irreversible impacts on the ecosystem. I have two excellent panelists to shed more light on this topic today with me, bringing in their key expertise to help us better understand the challenges ahead, but hopefully none without solutions. I'm joined by Mr. Bittu Sahgal, celebrated Indian conservationist and founder of Sanctuary Nature Foundation, and Latika Nath, author, photographer, and wildlife conservationist. Just a quick note before we begin. I'll start with a few questions for our panel, and around the 45-minute mark, we'll open the floor to audience Q&A. So please use the Zoom Q&A function in front of you to send your queries, and we'll try to take some of them. So thank you once again for joining me, Mr. Sehgal and Latika. If I could ask
Thank you
you
for having
both
us.
if I could ask you both to briefly set the stage by giving us your assessment of where we are in terms of the climate issues in the region today, and how is climate change altering key ecosystems such as Sundarbans, the Himalayas, and inland wetlands, among others. So over to both of you. If I could start with you, Latika, and then we'll go to Mr. Sehgal.
Thank you. Um, Climate change is something that's of vital importance to South Asia in general. It affects us not only because of what is happening in the coastal region, but also what is happening to us because of the warming that happens that's related to elevation. And we are um, at a place where the entire region is affected by what's happening in the Himalayan ranges. And climate change has led to a change in uh, the area in which certain species are found because of global warming. There's a movement upwards towards higher regions. This has affected a lot of what is happening in wildlife today. We've also had an increase in incidents of floods and fires, and this has something that is really impacting on many of our species, as well as what is happening with the patterns of water availability, the monsoons, the rain patterns, and that is affecting much of the agricultural society that's prevalent in South Asia today.
Thank you, Latika. Over to you, Mr. Sehgal.
So, Farwa, it's like this. I don't think that Homo sapiens, the wise human, that's what it describes, that deserves the name Homo sapiens. It should be Homo sapiens stupidus or Homo stupidus suicidus. Because what we are doing right now is something no species on Earth does. No species on Earth destroys its own world, its own home. And as far as the climate crisis is concerned, it has just one simple, straightforward reason. We begun tampering with the biosphere and we are tampering with the atmosphere. And our tampering with that, because we think we're so smart, is the equivalent of incidentally, we're all bumped up monkeys, you know. I mean, we're just basically just chimpanzees that turned out very smart, but we're not that smart after all. If today I was to give a hammer to a chimpanzee and say, will you please edit Shakespeare, you know, Julius Caesar, will you edit it? That's the relationship between our ability to manage the planet and what we are doing to it right now. So here is the issue with climate change. We're sending too much carbon up into the atmosphere. And in the process of doing this, we are changing everything, every single thing. This was one of the reasons you've got ice ages and you've got this and you've got that. Climate change has always taken place, but the pace at which it takes place is very slow. And species get a chance to adapt. Right now, it's at whistle fast speed. Imagine you're crossing a road and you see a car something like 60 kilometers, 60 meters away, and you can run across the road. But suppose that car was traveling at 1,000 kilometers an hour, then before you even took 3 steps, you'd get slammed down. So climate change has taken away the elasticity of time for us to do things, but there are solutions. Farwa, we spoke about the possibility of solutions. The solutions are there, but there's one critical problem that exists. Every single species on Earth, it has learned to adapt to its environment or it has vanished from the planet over the last several billion years. We human beings imagine that we've either become the gods we invented or that we invented the biosphere. So we're tinkering with it in such a way, but we are unable to control what we are doing. And the result of that is, as Latika spoke just now, it's too hot, it's too cold, there's too much rain, there's too little rain, the rain comes too early, the rain comes too late. If you look at the world of the biosphere, the biodiversity of the world, we've got early flowering, we've got late flowering, we've got early nesting, we've got late nesting, we've got early migration, we've got late. It's just like the system is going, it's shaking like this, and it can all come back. I had mentioned to you that my average constituency is 14 years. That's the average age of my constituency. And I owe them an apology. And I'm so sorry that my generation, I'm the oldest one over here, possibly I feel sometimes in the world. But the fact is that we've not looked after your world well. But then there is this small chink of hope. This planet and biosphere can fix itself. And the connection between the climate crisis, climate change, and the biosphere is the connection between your teeth and your gums. There's no point getting fantastic orthodontia done if you've got gum disease and your teeth fall out. So there's no point making bridges and dams and roads and all manner of skyscrapers and everything else if we suddenly become not, if water is not available to us. For instance, if the monsoon doesn't arrive in time, so our economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the biosphere, and our climate change solutions lie in our somehow allowing us, enabling us to trust that the biosphere knows better than us and to obey the rules. There's no point trying to break the rules because we are just bumped up monkeys. We are smart, but we're not smart enough. So mine is a slightly twisted way of explaining what climate change is, but it's the largest challenge that has ever come. And the only threat that we have is ourselves. There's nobody else threatening us from Mars or Venus or somewhere far away. We are our only threat and we are our only solution. And our solution is to let nature do what it does best. It can fix itself.
Well, thank you, Mr. Sehgal. And both of you have highlighted some of the most urgent challenges, and some are more evident than the others, right? We talk so much about climate change and how the nature is unfolding its wrath in a way that you see it in your everyday lives, whether it's the floods, whether it's your erratic monsoon, whether it's, the heat waves that particularly South Asia and the subcontinent has been experiencing. But there's a human factor there as well. As population rise that the region is seeing, what is their contribution to worsening the impacts of climate change? And how do we sort of also, in a way, manage the whole demand and supply gap? You're over extracting water, you're actually intensifying the already scarce and stressed natural water resources. Since we talked a little bit about water, there's also the air pollution issue, which is not only impacting the human population, but what comes to impact your species in the region. other species in the region. I do want to bring in, because since we talked about the water and water is and transboundary rivers, they're very close to my heart in the region, is also, this rapid dam building. And I know we talked a little bit about it as well internally last week, where we discussed how this rapid dam building that's taking place on the rivers in a race to sort of secure whether it's hydropower, whether it's just in competition between riparian countries, upstream, downstream. There's this concern with this major dam that China is building at the Great Bend on the Yarlung-Tsangpo Brahmaputra River, and what impacts it might have on the biodiversity and how it might disrupt the ecosystem and what are the environmental costs associated. So there are these real concerns. But I do want to come to both of you now, to also discuss, because we want to make this conversation as solution oriented as possible. And like you said, there has to be a way out for the future generations to recover from what some of the conditions that we are facing right now. But the challenge is humongous. So, what are some successful examples of climate resilient conservation practices in South Asia that you both have witnessed, experienced, been a part of that could be scaled up?
Well,
So,
I can start by just saying that India has demonstrated what the solutions are. There was a time post-independence when we went on a building spree and we lost such a large percentage of our forests. The tiger almost vanished. We thought that the tiger would vanish because of shikar that's being done, but the tiger really vanished because its habitat was taken away. So in 1973, we launched Project Tiger, and that happens to be the world's most successful two-scale rewilding project. So in terms of general solutions, each one of us has our own roles to play, and we'll each produce our own solutions or we'll create our own problems. But the hard fact of the matter is that there is not a blade of grass or a house plant or algae. There's nothing that actually is plant life that can grow without pulling carbon down. So when we are talking in terms of rewilding, while the whole world is talking about don't send up more carbon fuel, don't send up more deforestation, don't do all that, don't send up more methane, nobody is talking about bringing the amount of carbon that's already in the atmosphere down, or no, not nobody. There are people who are talking, but nobody really in power is listening. So our solutions lie in not greening our planet by planting a million trees. Human beings are the world's worst tree planters. The tree planters are the butterflies, the birds, the bees, the elephants, the monkeys, even the rhinos. I mean, all these animals are the maintenance engineers of our planet. And if we make it impossible for them to maintain it, then our planet's going to get from bad to worse. If we just give them space to live, we'll find suddenly that the skies will be blue again, water will be clean again, soils will be productive again, and we'll see more smiling faces than crying faces. I'm not so sure I answered your question directly, but we've got time to go.
no, we would love to see smiling faces.
Yeah.
Latika, thoughts?
Okay. So for me, I tend to, I mean, I agree with everything Bittu's saying, but I also want to talk about the fact that in the last decade, or even less, in the last 6 or 7 years, there's been a quantum leap in the technologies that people are inventing as alternatives to the old traditional ways of doing things. So there is cement now which is actually produces oxygen and works almost like chlorophyll. There are roofs which are now solar panels. So if we can, and we have cement which is being made so that roads become spongy and absorb water rather than allowing runoff. These are small solutions, but if we put them all together, I think there's great hope. What we need is a basic policy decision that the adoption of sustainable and climate friendly technology is something that is going to be promoted and the the public is going to be persuaded to make that change. At the moment, the cost of being sustainable is too high. So people tend to use technologies that are tried and tested and still the old way of doing things, which are continuing the damage that is being done to the environment. We need a firm resolve that we're going to stop this, stop it soon, and do the change. And whatever we need to do to make that change, we need to be willing to do that. And that's really, I think, the key to where how we go forward. Because as long as we continue using fossil fuels, as long as we make large hydroelectric dams, as long as every building depends on electricity from a grid, we're going to continue to have these problems. The minute every unit becomes a self-sustaining unit, things are going to change. And I think that's the vision that we now need to put forward to the world.
No, thank you, Latika. I think you nailed it when, the policy and governance changes are very important to drive and scale up some of the solutions that are already being implemented on the ground. But also, we do realize that a lot of these initiatives that we've seen, whether it's, from a sustainable development perspective, initiating some of those ideas, whether it's in your businesses or on another level, whether it's in academics, whether it's in government, it is more or less driven by commercial interests. And so we have to maybe incorporate the socioeconomic and the human element a lot more, as much as we value commercial interest driving some of these.
Yes.
I think that might just accelerate the pace,
Yes.
and highlight the urgency that we're dealing with. But
Yes.
if I could stick with you, Latika, here, because we can dive deeper into the policy side of things, and we
Hmm.
can discuss how do we better mobilize the private
Hmm.
sector and
Hmm.
get
Hmm.
political will on board. But you bring in a unique experience, which is the world of creativity, right? So how do you best make use of the creative world and compelling sort of visual storytelling to educate and help galvanize? I think the education factor is very important in our part of the world in South Asia when it comes to climate change and impacts on human populations, biodiversity, wildlife, and also help galvanize regional and global support, I would say,
Hmm.
for some urgent climate adaptation measures and biodiversity hotspots like South Asia.
So, you're so right. I think a visual image creates a very lasting impact, and more people will remember a visual image that conveys a story than the takeaway from a lecture that, is half an hour long and they have to sit through somebody talking at them. So I think visually, if we can actually show people what the truth is, what the reality is, and also show people what the vision is, I think it can go a long way. And I think, especially when you're targeting the young, I think involving art, involving media, involving both print and visual media is something that's increasingly being recognized as a very, very important tool to fight this whole thing. Very recently, there was this project that took place where you had something called the herds. And the herds are made out of recycled cardboard. They're life-size African animals that were created, and they've actually been physically taken across as these life-size puppets, all the way from Congo, right across Africa to Morocco. Then from Morocco, it crossed the ocean to Spain. From Spain, they went through Europe up to the UK. And from now, they've gone up to the Scandinavian countries. And they've involved people all along the route, not only artists, but students, children, the public in general, and created an awareness about what is happening because of climate change and habitat loss to these species. There are many artists as well, people like Nick Brandt, who's done these amazing series where he actually went to places that used to have wild animals, and he's got images of the wild animals in those places and put a huge life-size image of this and as it used to be, and in a setting of maybe a transportation yard or a factory. So you remembered what it was and what was sacrificed for the creation of this industrial or human space. So these things are really important, and I think more and more we're tending to use these to change the narrative, to explain to people what is needed. And I think even through Kids for Tigers, Bittu's always used art. Bittu's always told people to come forward and share their creations, and I think that's what really draws, especially the young people in.
Thank you, Latika. You perfectly um, prepped me for a set to Mr. Sehgal now because I was just going to ask him about kids,
Hmm.
um, tigers, because he mentioned his general constituents are 14 years old. So dealing with a lot of young people every day. So what are some key outreach efforts, Mr. Sehgal, especially when it comes to sort of educating these young folks and enabling champions of the cause, for a better tomorrow? And please talk to us a little bit more about Kids for Tiger, which is this environmental educational program for schools, also the world's largest Save the Tiger scroll of participants. How do you come about that, and what are some tangible sort of positive impacts you've seen with this initiative? Over to you,
See,
Mr.
Kids for Tigers started in the year 2000. All right, that's now almost 25 years ago. And at the very start, it was designed to be an adult literacy program because it's very difficult to get a 25 to 35 to 40-year-old to move away from their necessity to feed themselves, get a job, do this thing. But the moment they have kids, they'll do anything from daddy, I want chocolate, or mom, I want to do this. It's the best way to get to the adults. So Kids for Tigers, when I said my average constituency is 14, here is a simple story we tell them. We use the tiger as a metaphor for all of nature. The tiger is one day a kangaroo, and another day a whale, and a third day a termite, and a fourth day an ant, and a fifth day a bee. It's just representative of all of nature. And we say, you can't save the tiger unless you save its home, its ecosystem, its forest. When you save its ecosystem and its forest, imagine just one thing. When the rain falls, it doesn't fall on the ground. It falls on the upper canopy, middle canopy, lower canopy, and then not on the ground, but on the fallen leaves. And then it touches the soil. That's how delicate the soil is. So when that happens, the water goes down into the aquifers, which are underground storages. And when the rains stop, then those storages feed our rivers, they feed our lakes, they feed our wetlands, and then they feed our wells. And the wells are the water we use to feed our farms, to water our farms, and the farms actually feed us. So there's that cycle. Saving the tiger is not doing it a favor. Saving the tiger is saving ourselves. To this, we now add a simple thing that the tiger used to be called Pattedar Pani Ka Devta. In India, it's a striped water god. The forest used to be always referred to as, like we would say, ki jungle nadi ki maa hai, which is to say the forest is the mother of the river, which is what we just explained. So we go to children and we explain these in very simple metaphors and language with fun, with good stuff. We have no right to foist ecological grief on them. But there is one truth that every teacher in the world knows, every mother in the world knows. Children don't do what you tell them to do. Children do what you do. And that's really what the first solution is, that we have to tell ourselves, my generation, what I call the Buddha party, that behave yourself in front of your children the same way that you wouldn't be boorish. Well, don't treat their arrival lounge so badly when you're sitting in the departure lounge. So we are telling our children it's possible for everything to be fixed because the best planters are the bees, the butterflies, they do all the work. The bats, everything. They will fix everything. It'll come back to life. But if we continue to do what we're doing now, then Latika, you know how it is. I mean, we celebrate 1947, India gained its independence, this, that, and the other. That was colonization, what you might call, you know, flat colonization, geographical colonization. We are now embarked on intergenerational colonization. And with the help of the children, we are telling adults who love the children that, look, if you want to do your child a favor, then please just give them air that they can breathe, give them water that they can drink, they give them soils on which food can grow, and let the system fix itself. If you or I fall sick and we go to the hospital, they're not going to say, give me 5 push ups, give me run around, get this thing, do some pull ups. They're going to say, rest a little while. Everything will be all right because your body will fix itself. And what's going on inside our bodies is exactly the same thing that's going on outside our bodies with the biosphere. It fixes itself. It's trying desperately to fix itself. Just let it do so. And honestly, um, I mean, Latika, I mean, I agree with you about the visuals, you know. My worry now is that the visuals we're seeing on television, it's like a reality show. It's like some kind of a flood here, a drought there, a cyclone there. And when parents are talking, they're talking about this and that, and this happened in Texas. And all this impacts our children. They begin to feel hopeless. They begin to feel. I was asked by a young kid, and I almost wept that, "Oh, will I die? You know, when the floods come, will it also take away my home?" This is not what we want our children to live with. So the climate issue that we're talking about, first of all, is intrinsically linked to the biosphere, which means species. When we lose species, we lose our workers, our maintenance engineers, and we don't have the technology. Human beings do not have the technology to look after the biosphere into which we were born. We need a little humility. We need to have a little absence of arrogance. We need to educate ourselves on ignorance, and certainly we need to put a curb on avarice. You know, if these things are able, we are able to do this. I promise you, it's very short. We had the pandemic. Things were in such a mess. I live in Mumbai. You could barely see across Chowpatty, and literally 2 weeks time, the skies turned blue. In Delhi, I was told you can look into the Yamuna, which other normally you couldn't do a thing. And animals started coming out and saying, "Hey, where are these ruffians gone?" You know, I mean, so they started coming out and singing outside. So everything can be fixed. We just have to give it time. I want the young people who listen to this not to feel hopeless. I want the young people to know that they are living in a world that is self-repairing. And a little later in this, I'll ask all of you adults to pretend that you're 9 years old. But let's go on with the rest of it. And then we'll figure out, why do I want you to pretend that you're 9 years old? Because that's what we tell our children. We tell children stories, and the children influence their parents. And Latika, the various cops that we see, sometimes they're financed by the petroleum lobby, sometimes they're financed by the coal lobby, sometimes they're financed by XYZ. They're looking to do business as usual. We cannot afford that. We need to make a change, and we will make the change. Otherwise, the change will be forced on us. And that's not very pleasant, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Farwa,
thank
you
you.
have to forgive me for going here and there. You
No,
know?
no, 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 no.
Yeah.
This is perfectly, suitable to the conversation that we're trying to have
Yeah.
today. It's a poignant, powerful message, especially for our young listeners. And like you said, Latika, the power of the visual medium. I recently came across, I'm sure you did too, families swept by um, flash floods and waiting for rescue, but unfortunately, the area being too remote for rescue operations to come in. So, same applies to what will happen to, say, the species, the not other than humans that are living in these remote areas where there are no rescue operations or none sort of facilitated for them, for wildlife animals to be impacted by landslides, by earthquakes, by other natural disasters that hit them. There is a real risk of, how marine life is getting impacted because of the pollution in the seas or high level sea rises. So all of these things are important, and the earlier you start the education, the better of whether you incorporate into your school curriculum. I did not grow up with that sort of climate change angle being built into my textbooks. We learned about generally about topography, we learned about the biosphere, but we did not necessarily discuss so much so the impacts, because we did not see them unfolding. I think that is where the challenge is, that much of the policy making, whether it's educational policy making, whether it's sort of the government policy making, it is so reactionary in our part of the world. It's not built with foresight. This is going to happen a decade from now on, and we must prepare ourselves for that. And so we should be taking so and so measures. We should be incorporating educational programs. But I do want to bring your attention to something which our part of the world is particularly um, vulnerable to. We have this massive population, right? It's South Asia, 1.9 billion and growing. Um, you have a massive population that's marginalized, a massive population that lives in remote areas, that both do not necessarily have the awareness, but also just are unable to be a part of some of these conversations. They are not on the decision-making table. They're not stakeholders to something that they're getting impacted by on the daily. So how do you, and then there are various communities that actually bring in intensive technical know-how because they deal with climate change on the front lines every single day. So how do community-led, or say indigenous conservation initiatives, factor into climate biodiversity sort of strategies today? Is there a model, is there an example that you would want to share, or you think there is an absence, or there's a massive gap in this space where we are not really using community-led or indigenous-led initiatives in this space?
So, I think in India, especially, we're fortunate because we have tribal and indigenous societies that have a huge amount of knowledge and information because they live as parts of a whole ecosystem. They recognize that they're just one of the species that live in that space. And these are the true guardians of all that is beautiful and green in South Asia, where most of the species protection is taking place. And they are the ones that allow whatever conservation has happened to have happened despite the big thrust on human-led development. So I think we do have to acknowledge that this is there, and we're very fortunate that this is there. And this is how we are different from continents like Europe, for instance, because we have all these tribes and all these communities. But yes, policy and decision makers do not take this indigenous knowledge into consideration in as strong a way as they should be taking it in. And for them, only modern industrial development is development and progress. So I think a recognition of an alternate way of life that is actually sustainable in the truest sense is something that we need to talk about much more in our planning and decision making. So I think, and the fact that this lot of people do not have the financial resources that the modern developing side of humanity has, and access to power to be able to implement their way instead of the modern way, I think these are the things that we really need to now start at least acknowledging and talk about.
Thank you,
Bittu,
Latika. Totally
maybe
agree.
will can help us.
No. I mean, look, we have to help each other in one form or the other. But I'll tell you this, that there is nothing evil about what's happening to us. There's no plot, there's no plan that we're going to send trouble down here. As I said, we're creating our own problems, and the truth is that everybody thinks somebody else will do it. Like if Bittu Sahgal is running around, say, saving tigers, somebody says that, all right, look, you're only interested in tigers. I was accused many times of being an elitist, English speaking, middle class, city dwelling environmentalist, and I don't care about anybody else. So at that point, I'm not, by nature, I don't fight. So I just asked them, okay, I am elitist, I am everything you say, but show me one elitist tiger, you know, show me an elitist elephant, show me an elitist snake. We're looking to protect those things that actually we revere. India, I mean, Farwa, India should be exporting its attitudes to nature, reverence, care, trust. There's almost nothing in nature that we don't worship, whether it be a snake or a mouse or the moon or the sun or the water or the moon. Everything is something that is sacred to us. And those are the people that Latika was referring to. And many of them, like people like us, who we're talking on this television interview right now, but many of us have moved out of that. But many of us also understand that, look, we may have moved out, but that's where life is. Life is not in a cement 60-story structure. A circumstance is coming where the great equalizer will not be the law. It will not be guns and guards. It will not be all those things that we, the powerful, use. The great equalizer is the biosphere. And these people that you're speaking about, these beautiful people that you're speaking about, even when Project Tiger was launched, they were very badly treated. They were just said, okay, move out of here and let everything come back. फाइन वो हिंदी में कहते हैं कि दही जमाने के लिए जामुन चाहिए टू मेक dahi you need to have the culture of the dahi to protect it, and what we were saying is you can't make uh, lassi out of jamun. What happens then? So there were a lot of violations there, and today we may have 500 or 400 or 500 or 600 protected areas where biospheres, the biosphere is giving us different biogeographic zones, arid zones, rainforests, grasslands, etc. What we need very, very desperately right now is to recognize that, look, those are the ones on which the economies stand. Those are the ones on which the future of our children stand. And it's in our self-interest to do so. This is not an animal rights program. This is a species rights uh, program. And I mean, I don't know, it's self-interest. Eventually, please be sure of one thing. Please be absolutely sure of one thing. The men that are running amok right now with guns and I can build the building bigger, I can build the dam bigger, I can build a faster car, I can build a faster road. These guys are going to be at a deep discount when the biosphere moves a little bit, when it moves into second gear, not even in first gear fully right now, because we won't be allowed to do the things that we think we can do now. And I just don't want the pain that comes with being forced to do this. The biosphere is asking us to kneel in prayer, and we will be forced to kneel in subjugation. And that time that I used to speak about when I was 30 years old, that was 45 years ago or thereabouts. I used to say that in 20 years this will happen, 30 years this will happen, we'll get everything fixed. The elasticity of time has brought it down to 2 years, 3 years. The tipping point has been crossed. It's not about to be crossed. But we are not sinking right now. We can still come back and we can still fix things, and we still do have time, but not the kind of time that my generation had in the 70s and 60s and 80s. So this new generation, I'm hoping that they will understand from the love of their parents and from the reality show that's going on. I mean, we only used to talk about, oh, this will happen, that will happen, fires will take place. Now we've got Texas, we've got Canada, we've got Los Angeles, we've got 700 landslides in the Himalaya. If we can't see this, we got floods in Bangalore, we got floods in, I mean, droughts everywhere. All these are signs. We just have to listen to them and slow down. Just slow down. And we ourselves, we tell our children to trust in nature. We ourselves should trust in nature. And we don't have the luxury of fighting with each other. I've gone to court half a dozen times and I've worked on CRZ rules and I've worked on eco-sensitive zones and things and policy making in the government. India has some of the best wildlife environmental laws, but how are they being implemented? And why are they being implemented in ways that we think that the GDP will go up? And the GDP is one of the worst measures of how well the world is doing. It's a great measure of seeing how much bank balances go up. But it's not like you cut a tree down and the GDP goes up. You let it grow on its own and nothing happens. You kill an elephant for ivory, you sell the ivory, the GDP goes up. So I'm saying that this is not an accusation, this is an observation. And your generation, Latika, and I'm including you and Farwa in that, that you are the transition generation. So I can speak all these things, and we're doing everything that we can, and we run Kids for Tigers, a program that actually we met prime ministers, and we're in the Limca Book of Records for the largest scroll. Those children are you now, the people that we used to do. So I'm saying, take charge. Some of us are there who can say, don't go that direction, this will happen, that will happen. But otherwise, we just have to love our children more and we'll fix everything.
No, thank you, Mr. Sahgal. I think it is it's absolutely a time for introspection. I
Yep.
think for everyone, not only for the policymakers, but I think just us as humans who are dealing with the impacts of climate change and how we're actually seeing it translate into, like you said, it's a reality show. We're seeing it translate into our daily lives, but also in a way that we can't ignore it anymore. It's not a developing world issue anymore. It is, you seeing, like you mentioned, the example of Texas and others. We're seeing this happen worldwide. There are heat waves across Europe. There is the same kind of challenges that you would have in once what was considered a developing world or a global south, or however you want to put it, being restricted to that part of the globe. You're seeing that in the global north as well. And that's why there's a need to find, like you very rightly said, it's not time to be competitive. It's not about working against each other. It's how you should work with one another, which brings me to my next question before we go to audience Q&A. Very quickly, let's ground this conversation in the region a little bit, and discuss a little about what are some cooperative mechanisms available to us. What we've discussed, all of these issue sets, they are not exclusive to one country in the region. They're shared challenges, where we across South Asia, in a region where people speak very similar languages, they eat similar food, they look similar, they wear similar clothes, and they share very similar challenges, socioeconomic, but also climate. So, what mechanisms are already in place or should be developed for cross-border conservation cooperation in light of these shared ecosystem and species? I know that Bangladesh and India's Sundarban Regional Cooperation Initiative was signed in 2011, and that led to a joint tiger census between the two countries. There's also some work that ICIMOD and the World Bank has been doing in the region to develop better management frameworks in this context. But there's a lot more untapped potential. So we know all the politics that surround the region, but beyond that, how do you see cross-border cooperation? Latika and then Mr. Sahgal very briefly, and we'll go to our audience Q&A next.
Okay. I've always been talking about the fact that we consider the Himalayas the third pole. And having, looked and studied at the Antarctic Treaty, I really feel that the way forward would be that every country that is in connection with the with this mountain range could actually come up with a treaty, because so much of our water problem, so much of our water sources are connected to this entire range. And it's something that we've just never talked about. We've never talked about treating this entire mountain range as a unique entity that needs special management, that cannot be determined because of a political boundary drawn by one state and a change in policy because that one state wants to change it. So first of all, I think that that's something that's really, really important. I think also I would like to propose a new way of looking at shared water. So when you have rivers that go from one country to another, or an ocean that touches more than one country, we need to look at these resources as resources that belong to the planet, and that should be jointly managed as a planetary resource on which the future of life on the planet depends. And I think it's only when that can happen will we make any progress. I don't know if this is a real idealistic dream, but this is a dream that I have, and I feel this would maybe one way of going forward.
Thank you, Latika. Mrs. Sahgal.
Well, Latika, to you, I'll say that if you don't have a dream, how are you going to make a dream come true? So there's
That's
nothing
it.
wrong in dreaming
Yeah.
at all, because it's only the
Yeah.
dreamers who can actually paint a picture of a better world tomorrow.
Yes.
But we've also got to work towards a better world.
Yes.
So I'd put it like this, that I did ask you, I told you that, and all your listeners, that for a while, no matter how old you are, pretend you're just 9 years old. All right. This is what we tell our children. You're 9 years old, you're living in a house, it's a magic house. By the way, forget about sugar highs right now. It's only an analogy. I'm not suggesting you get all the things that I'm going to talk to you about and put them in your mouth. I'm saying, suppose the windows were made of lollipop, the doors were made of chocolate. You open the tap and you get lemonade. And every stone, everything that you see over there is delicious, lovely, wonderful, wonderful stuff. And you go to sleep, and tomorrow morning, everything comes back. It's a magic home. It's wonderful. And the children are already saying, yes, Bittu uncle, I would love to live in a home like this. And I said, look, suppose somebody said, I'm going to break your home. Would you be happy? Said, no, we'll never be happy. How can we be happy? Such a lovely home. I said, but every monkey lives in a magic home. The birds live in a magic home. They nest in there. They eat parts of the berries of that thing and it comes back again year after year. It fixes yourself. So that's the element of hope that we give. Like a scratch on your hand, it fixes itself. So the key thing for me, after having spent 20 years helping to write laws and rules and talking about cop this and cop that, upon those adults are basically, it's a cop out, But the children, you have the ability for children who are 9 years old to change the world by expressing yourself. And as far as we are concerned, our self-esteem, I think, is something we need to call into play. It's not going to be the only thing, but we need to start somewhere. And our self-esteem, how do we want to be remembered by our children? They say that history is always written by the victors. It's not the victors this time, it's the survivors. The young children will grow up. We're gone. We're in the departure lounge. The arrival lounge is going to write the history. So we can build statues from here to Mars. But at the end of the day, how will we be remembered? What will they write about our generation? That we had all this technology and we used it to destroy the world? Or did we have so much technology and we learned to live with the world? Or did we go to those people, those beautiful people who now are living on the outside of our protected area? They should become the primary beneficiaries of enhanced biodiversity. If they are the beneficiaries, they should be the filter, not only in India. I'm talking about in America, in India, in Australia, in Europe, everywhere. All the local people who used to be there, all the indigenous people that used to be there should become honored stewards of the planet. It's easier said than done. Nobody likes to give up power, but there is always that sort of Damocles on those who think that they are all powerful. You are not as powerful as the biosphere. The dinosaurs were more powerful than you, and it just took a little bit of cloud cover, the equivalent of dust cover, to make the dinosaurs not survive. We just have to adapt. Don't force the biosphere to adapt to you. The children will bless us. I think that in itself, the fact that we are working to have the children bless us, and we have the technology, and that technology is not through steel and glass. The technology is the most proven technology in the world, what the biosphere does. It takes the sun, it turns that into carbohydrates, it feeds us. That's photosynthesis. Every child knows that. And climate change, I can tell you that my 10-year-olds will be able to talk to their parents and tell them what climate change is. We take them into a school bus and parked in the sun. And then we say, okay, is it hot inside? It's very hot, very hot, very hot. We say, well, UV radiation came in very fast. But when infrared radiation tried to go out, it stayed inside there. And that's why your car is hot. And the plants, we tell them to touch the plant, it's cool. In the sun, you tell them to touch a car, ouch, it's very hot. So we need the plants to survive, and we need to be happy with less.